On an evening in 1976, with just 23 minutes until live broadcast, the phone rang in Andy Williams' dressing room. The voice on the other end didn't just break his heart. It shattered the America's perfect gentleman image he had meticulously built for years. That night, Andy threw out the script. While his conductor watched in horror, he walked onto the stage and stripped his soul bare before millions with an unplanned, forbidden song. What you are about to watch isn't a concert. It is the true story of a man falling apart, song by song, right in front of 12 million people. Andy was alone in the dim light of his dressing room doing vocal warm-ups when the phone rang. He assumed it was his mother calling to wish him luck, as she always did before big shows. It wasn't his mother. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Andy said almost nothing. He mostly just listened. His face transformed first from confusion to the coldness of denial, and finally to physical pain. When he finally hung up, he couldn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the phone as if the receiver had whispered terrible news in a language he didn't understand but could feel in his very bones. Linda Chun, his longtime makeup artist, knocked softly and entered. "Andy, we need to touch up your—" She stopped mid-sentence. Something was wrong. Andy was standing perfectly still, like a statue, but his hands were shaking uncontrollably. He was trying to breathe like a man who had just been hit by an invisible sledgehammer. "Andy, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Andy said with an automatic reflex. But his voice was strangled, sounding as if he had shards of glass in his throat. "You don't look—" "I said I'm fine, Linda." The sharpness in his tone made her step back. Andy Williams raising his voice at someone was unheard of. Linda left the room quickly in fear and immediately bumped into conductor Nick Perito in the hallway. "Something's wrong with Andy, Nick. Really wrong." Nick entered the dressing room to find Andy staring blankly at the evening's set list. Song 7 was circled in red. Love Story, Where Do I Begin? This was supposed to be the emotional centerpiece of the show. A romantic declaration sung directly to camera, knowing his wife would be watching from the front row. But Claudine wasn't in the front row. Nick had checked the audience 10 minutes ago and seen the empty seat. He had assumed she was stuck in traffic. Now, looking at Andy's face, he realized. Claudine wasn't late. Claudine wasn't coming at all. "Nick," Andy whispered, not taking his eyes off the paper. "I need to change Song 7. Andy, we go live in 22 minutes. We can't change it now, the lighting, the camera angles. We're changing it." There was a tone in Andy's voice that silenced Nick. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even emotion. It was the sound of a heavy iron door closing, cold and final. Andy scribbled something on a piece of paper with trembling hands and handed it to Nick. The writing was almost illegible. Nick read it. Then he looked at Andy with horror. "Andy, you can't. If you sing this song, if you say those words on live TV, there's no taking it back. The press will tear you apart. The network will destroy us. Let them. But what about your image? The perfect life you've built for years." "My image." Andy looked up from the paper for the first time. There was raw pain in his eyes. "Want to know a secret about my image, Nick? It was all a lie. The perfect marriage? A lie. The happy family picture? A lie. America's gentleman? Just a sweet lie we all chose to believe." He took a deep breath. "For 15 years, I've smiled when I didn't feel like it. I've sung love songs when love felt like a joke. I've pretended everything was perfect from the outside while it was rotting on the inside. Tonight, just for 3 minutes, I'm going to tell the truth. Then I'll go back to being the puppet you all want me to be." The stage manager opened the door. "Andy, to stage. 5 minutes." Andy stood up, adjusted his tuxedo, and looked in the mirror. The man staring back looked the same. Flawless, elegant, ready to entertain millions. But the light in his eyes was gone. "Give the band the new arrangement," Andy said. "They'll know what to do." "So what song are you singing?" Andy smiled, but it was the saddest smile Nick had ever seen in his life. "You'll find out when America does." At exactly 7:30 p.m., the show began. The opening was flawless. Andy walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. His smile was warm, his voice smooth as silk. To the 12 million viewers watching at home, everything seemed fine. This was the Andy Williams they knew and loved. He sang with his brothers, joked with John Denver, performed a duet with Marie Osmond. Everything was according to the script. In the control room, NBC executives were over the moon. This is going to be the highest-rated special of the year. But Nick Perito, conducting the orchestra, had sweaty palms. He could see the tension in Andy's shoulders, how his knuckles turned white gripping the microphone. Andy wasn't performing. He was barely holding on. Song 6 ended. The applause died down. Andy walked to center stage, and the atmosphere suddenly shifted. That glitzy showbiz vibe evaporated. Andy stood there for a long moment without speaking. Murmurs began in the audience. This wasn't in the script. "Ladies and gentlemen," Andy finally said, his voice quieter than usual, "I'm going to do something different now. Something we didn't rehearse." In the control room, the director leaned forward. "What is he doing?" "I want to dedicate this next song to someone who was supposed to be here tonight." Andy paused, his mask slipping for a split second. "But someone who isn't." Deathly silence filled the hall. This wasn't part of the show. This was real. "About 30 minutes ago, I received some news, and I realized something. I've been singing other people's words for so long, I've forgotten the sound of my own truth." The cameras pushed in close on his face. "So tonight, I'm going to sing something true. And I'm going to dedicate it to the person who taught me that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes, love isn't even real." Executives were screaming in the control room, "Cut to commercial! Cut the feed! What is this man saying?" But the director held up his hand. "Keep rolling. All cameras on Andy. This is television history." Andy nodded to Nick. The music began. The song Andy chose was Solitaire. A devastating ballad about loneliness, a game that can't be won, and a lover who is gone. When Andy entered the song, that famously smooth voice was shaking. This wasn't a technical error. It was the sound of pain knotting in his throat. There was a man, a lonely man, who lost his love through his indifference. The camera operators didn't know where to look, but the director gave the order, "Tight on his face. Get in very close. Let them see everything." And America saw everything. They saw Andy Williams' perfect smile vanish. They saw his eyes fill with tears. They saw his hand holding the microphone trembling violently. This wasn't a performance. This was a confession. In the front row, Andy's mother was crying. The studio audience was in shock. No one dared to applaud. It was as if they were witnessing a moment both sacred and terrible. In the chorus, Andy stopped hiding. His voice cracked. He didn't try to fix it. He poured the pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak right into the microphone just as it was. When the song ended, someone from the back of the studio started clapping slowly. Then another. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. This applause wasn't for a beautiful song. This applause was for the courage of a man willing to break in front of millions. Andy spoke into the microphone without wiping his tear-filled eyes. "This song is for everyone who feels invisible in their own life. And this song is for my wife, Claudine. Wherever you are tonight, I hope you're happy." The cameras recorded everything. The tears, the pain, and the moment a man chose truth over image. The show continued because the show must go on. But after that night, nothing was ever the same. NBC's phone lines jammed. The network expected protests, but the thousands of calls were to say, "Thank you." People said, "Thank you for making us feel we aren't alone, Andy." Ratings exploded. 15 million people watched that moment. However, there was something no one knew that night. The phone call Andy received wasn't just simple news of a breakup or betrayal. It was the first harbinger of a much darker, much more complex process. A tragedy that wouldn't leave the newspaper headlines for years to come. When Andy Williams sang Solitaire on stage that night, he announced not just the end of a marriage, but the end of an age of innocence. Years later, Johnny Carson would describe that moment. "It was the bravest thing I ever saw on live television." Andy Williams taught us an important lesson that November night. Sometimes the greatest strength is admitting you are broken. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth, even when the whole world is watching. If the story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Have you ever had moments where you smiled on the outside while a storm raged inside? Share your story in the comments. You are not alone. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss these incredible behind-the-scenes moments of music history.